You are now tuned in to Mastering Mitzvahs. Mastering Mitzvahs. A podcast focused on creating the perfect bar and bat mitzvah celebration, offering tips, tricks, and trends to ensure an amazing event. Mastering Mitzvahs. From New Jersey's own Explosive Entertainment. Explosive Entertainment.
I know you're gonna dig this.
And here they are, your hosts, Dylan Weissman and Mike Langser.
Hey, yo man. Summertime, it's July, and we haven't done a podcast since early May, and I think that only sort of sums up how busy the last 6 weeks has been.
Is that really when the last one was? It early May?
I think so. I think episode 138 was like the first week in May.
Wow. Okay. Well, I'm glad we're back. It is July 3rd. I probably should be on my boat right now, but I'm sitting at the office and we're recording a podcast.
I see value in that. And I hope that we can bring some value to that. It's definitely, look, I love the summertime for a lot of different reasons in our industry. It slows down a little bit so we can breathe and prep ourselves because a lot of the kids go away to their summer camps. Families go on vacation. They kind of, slow down in the hustle and bustle of the end of the year and the graduation season. So it does feel nice to breathe a little bit. But what I find is that families come out of the summertime in an absolute frenzy because their fall event is right around the corner. And I think that kind of sparked the interest of today's topic.
Yeah, I agree. And the summertime should be time for families to relax and enjoy and take a deep breath, but don't lose sight of what's so shortly ahead of you. Because I know, like, our coordinators, we're calling families saying, hey, your party's in 2 months. Yeah, I know it's summertime. I'll get to it. And then next thing you know, it's your party's in 2 weeks. And man, that's a little overwhelming.
Yeah, I mean, it can be. I mean, I feel like my September and early October families are the ones who have it the most challenging when it comes to their planning process because they don't plan ahead like a lot of our families in November or May, because they're more in a rhythm because of school. So that's where today's topic kind of came up. Episode 139, understanding planning forms. My hope here is that we can go over a little bit of our perspective on planning forms, why they exist, what you should be doing with them, why the questions exist in the way that they do, and when should you be working on them.
That's what I was going to say. Let's start with when. Let's start with when should they be looked at for the first time? And when should you start keying in some information? Then when should it be finalized, sealed, and not touched again?
Okay, so you asked a lot of questions there, and it all comes down to when. In my opinion and experience, you should look at them in the very first beat that you think about your event. Even if that's 2 years or 3 years in advance. And the reason for that is at least now you kind of have an expectation of what some of the things are needed for a great event planning process.
I often say the planning form is almost a checklist of things you need to think about.
Yeah.
So even though you don't necessarily know, who's going to cut the bread or who's going to recite the Kiddush or, who's going to light candle number 13, it's your checklist in your mind of things you need to start considering.
Yeah, and then even one step ahead of that, it's like every single company has some sort of planning form. Every single one of your vendors should have something that helps organize the thoughts of how they can execute your event. Photographers have them, videographers have them, caterers have them, decorators have them. So any vendor, from my experience, it's worth their salt, has some sort of planning form that you should be looking at least in the very first beat that you hire them. From there, however, I think that the majority of the planning forms should really start being heavily considered inside a year, and then very much in the full flow of working on it inside 9 months and so on.
And I would say within 3 months is when they should be pretty close to complete. And within 3 weeks, they should be complete and stamped for approval.
Yeah. So that's kind of like that 90, 60, 30-day marker. Like inside 90 days, you should have a really good idea of what that form says and how you're answering them. Inside 60 days, it should be like, goodness, 85% done. There's really not a whole lot of changes. that are going to happen, and then inside 30 days, damn, that's like you're in go time for a lot of your vendors. I just got off of a final with a family for next weekend, and we went over all of the forms, and they were talking to me about like changing things, and some of the changes they were asking about would be very easy to change if we discuss them in their planning forms at 60 days. But now that we're 14 days out or 10 days out in this case, I really don't think they should be rocking that boat and changing, because I think it's going to add a lot more stress to them. So it kind of brings me to the idea of like what it's going to be inside 14 days is pretty much what it's going to be the day of, with that barring any sort of crazy, change in expectation. But like you should really have a good head on your shoulders when you get inside that marker.
I often chuckle about song choices. If a family chose a song a month before the party, they clearly liked that song. But then when they make a change like a night before, and sometimes it happens, like we get these frantic text messages, the night before a party. Oh my God, I need to change the song for candle number 7 or for the grand entrance for the brother. The reality is, why are we changing a song? Like if it was good enough for you a month ago and you chose it, we didn't force it on you. Shouldn't that song still be of importance and something that you like?
Yeah, I think with song choices, and we can go on and on about song choices, but like the change you're making is obviously a big deal to you, but in the grand scheme of it, it adds a whole lot of stress to you and your vendors that could derail part of the rehearsal of your event. From the music perspective of like a candle lighting, if you want to change something in the 11th hour, 5, 6, 10 hours before your event, in a lot of cases, your DJ has already been prepped and planned and is ready for that. By adding in that little monkey wrench, while it seems like a really easy change to you, there's 3 different forms that DJ is referencing, plus the text message that you just sent over to the coordinator that then gets to get relayed over to the DJ or the lead on the job. Like there's a whole mess of reasons why that could screw up the natural success of the event.
You know what? The goal of this podcast is talking about planning forms, but this, we're going off tangent just a hair, but I think it's really important. I want to say 2 or so weeks ago, we had a montage that literally got changed the night before the party. And it was the morning of. We woke up at 6 a.m. to a message that said, I updated the montage that's in your Dropbox. Now, what a chain of issues that sort of caused. And at the end of the day, listen, we're professionals, and we encourage everybody to hire professionals, and you can run with the punches. But what I guess isn't realized by most clients, and I'm here to explain it. When you send a montage to us, often it needs to be reformatted. Like it may not be the exact format, it may not be the right file size. So, our video editor back in our office would go in and make that change during the week, resave it, acknowledge to the DJ, hey, there's a new file in your folder ready to go. Well, it's 6 o'clock in the morning, the day of a party. Our video editor may not be able to make that change. The DJ is already prepared and saved the prior video in their folder ready to go. These are complications that, we handle on the fly when they come our way, but talking about planning forms or just any preparation within that 2-week window is really when things should be rock solid and not changed.
Yeah. You're asking for trouble when changing it inside that amount of time. And you'll really get the value of your professionals inside that 2 weeks with those changes. Now, I know on our forums, we have a whole section dedicated to montages. How is it being played? In what format are you sending it to us? Does it have, X number of songs? How long is it? These are things that matter to the flow of the event. By telling us how long your montage is in that form, it allows us to plan a really good break in the action that can help catalyze a better dance set or give you a focal point for another speech or set yourself up for a great photo opportunity. By understanding the montage length early and often, you set yourself up for other success points. And that's part of why we ask about it in our planning forums.
Actually, we can almost go down the list of questions in our forms, and they all matter in how we design a timeline. So if there's a candle lighting or not, often dictates first off, do we need that 20-minute window of time for our candle lighting? But it also means, are we doing a hora after candle lighting, which is what we love to do? Or if there is no candle lighting, often the hora is in that first dance set. Again, not every party fits this mold, but if we know in advance if there's a candle lighting, we could put a timeline together. We could then share that timeline with photo and video team and catering team and make sure that we're all on the same page. That should not be done a day or so before the party. That should be, again, done and approved by all 2, 3, 4 weeks before the party. So candle lighting is a big piece of it. Is there a kiddush? Is there a motzi? Are we doing any games with the kids? Is there a father-daughter or mother-son dance? Like, these are all important elements that are on our questionnaire to help us understand the timeline.
It also gives us a little bit of a peek into your personality. Like, so the songs you choose for your candle lighting, the songs you choose for your entrance, the songs you choose for your father-daughter dance or your mother-son dance, it tells us a little bit about the type of people you are and gives us an opportunity to approach you in a way that feels comfortable. My really good example is this weekend, I have a family who I know is going to have an absolutely awesome adult set. You want to know how I know that? Because of the request list that they have, but also what they picked for their father-son dance is just the two of us, Will Smith. And they have A Tribe Called Quest in their grand entrance form. Like, by giving us that information, it allows real professionals to go down the rabbit hole and understand, all right, well, if they're really into this music for these special moments, they're probably really into it for their dancing too. And it gives us a lot to play with.
So Dylan, I think we should move on, but something just kind of came to my mind is, we're talking about when, but an interesting thing is in the booking process or sales process, I think it's important for a client to say, can I see your planning forms and see what the response is? In our case, and it's easy for us to talk about us, in our case, we use a really great online portal. Clients can log in, they can fill out the forms digitally, and it's so easy to make changes. In the case of other companies, I know a lot of companies use similar software to us, but there's a lot of companies that will send a PDF or Word document and say, fill this out, or better yet, print this and handwrite in the responses. Can you imagine how complicated it is to change your candle lighting over and over again in a handwritten printed document? That's why I'm suggesting the client should ask about this in advance. I know it's part of my sales process. I like to show what our planning portal looks like. If you're a client and you're asking for this in advance and what you get doesn't look very thorough, it would raise a question, how experienced is this company in their craft?
Right. It does tell you a lot about it. So I think that's a great question to ask in your vetting and booking process. Like, hey, tell me about your coordination and planning process. Do you have forms that we fill out? Is there a place that we can put all of our favorite songs? Ask these questions and see what those responses are. And if you don't like the format, that should tell you something about the company.
Yeah.
Right?
I know we've put hours and hours into creating our forms, and then we're constantly tweaking it. I mean, even as recent as 2 days ago or yesterday, as a matter of fact, we were discussing, should we add another question to the forms specific to ceremonies?
Yeah.
So
They're ever changing and ever growing based on the trends and the questions and the problem spaces that we see when working. We have a part of it that talks about all the vendors that we're going to be working with, where it may seem inconsequential to like the success of the event. Like, why does my DJ need to know my catering manager's name, but furthermore my maitre d's name? Well, it allows us to build a relationship beforehand with the other players that are there for you. There are spots in our questionnaire that could seem inconsequential to throwing a great dance party. Like, what is your videographer's name? But if I see a specific videographer that I've worked with in the past, I can shoot him a text and, a couple of days before, hey, I'm so excited to be working with you. Is there anything that I can do for you for your event? Is there any expectations that the family has told you that I can then help implement for you? So every single question on there has a rhyme and a reason, at least one rhyme or reason, if not multiple.
Yeah, let's give a couple examples. I'll shoot them off, and you explain why they're important. There's a question on our forms, to describe where the cocktail hour space is versus the main room. Why is that important?
Well, it tells us about the equipment we need to bring. Do we need equipment for both kids and adults in separate spaces? Does that mean that we also need microphones for the kids because they have speeches or presentations, or we're going to run games in the cocktail space? That means we have to have another microphone. Now, look, any company that really does this well would have all of that gear ready to go, but knowing it ahead of time allows us to really make sure we lean into that.
Yeah, and even if we know a venue, it's not always the same. We could be at venue A today and be there next week, but the booking arrangement from the family, 1 week to another could be different, where like family one might book a brunch and everything is happening in the same room.
Yeah.
And family two might be booking a dinner with two separate cocktail hour rooms, a main room, and then maybe they break into a different area for Viennese style dessert.
Right.
That's really important for us to know.
Well, what about we ask questions like, what is your meal service plan? Why is that important? To a DJ, why would that be important?
You asked me, the former caterer, about this specifically. If there's a served meal versus a buffet, it changes our timing. And if the kids and the adults are eating at the same time versus separate times, changes our approach. You can imagine if all of a sudden, you snap your fingers and, food is being served for all guests. If you have 200 people, it's really hard to get the food out instantaneously. That might take 15 minutes. So what are we doing in that 15-minute window? Are guests sitting in the seats waiting for a plate to be delivered, or are they waiting in line for a buffet? Or are we managing the audience based on music or games? That's
Right.
really important.
Right. I mean, my favorite example is, if you need to confirm what meal each adult is having, we need to allot for that in the timeline where they're sitting in the exact seat that they're going to be for their dinner service. Otherwise, it could be chaos trying to get the right amount of fish or beef or vegetarian options out the right way.
Right.
We need to allot for that. And, it could be very frustrating to a really good entertainer when they're told in the exact moment, hey, I need everyone sitting down right now when we're about to start the hora, because it wasn't communicated to us that you need to take orders,
Yeah.
So that's a really important question.
There's another one. Guest count. Why is that important for us to know?
Well, a very real example is if you book a package with a certain number of staff or a certain number of entertainers, and then you don't fill out the guest count portion of it, like it just says how many kids, how many adults, and you just don't fill it out. And then we show up expecting to be, partying with 100 people and 200 people are showing up. You're vastly underprepared with the amount of eyes, ears, and voices on your guests. And that's a big part of crowd control. Your success of the celebration is reliant on the crowd control and making sure everyone moves through the motions the right way. You don't want it to be a surprise to them. It could pose a big threat to your flow, and everyone wants a really nice and healthy flow. And the only way to do that is to properly have the right staff in place to pull it off.
Yeah, agreed. I love the question on our forums, if you want what we call like interactive dances or line dances, like that's a very valuable question. Some families are adamantly opposed to do not play any of these follow me songs, and others embrace it and want every single one of them. So, the value of filling out these forms, we're not mind readers. We say it all the time. We're great entertainers, but we're not mind readers.
Yeah. If you hate a song, you need to enunciate that to us in the forums. We have a whole section for do not play. Don't play Taylor Swift. We would have never known that Taylor Swift is the biggest artist in the world right now if you didn't let us know that that's something you do not like. We would have never guessed that. We would have played it. It would have been in the first set.
Right.
So there's a lot of reasons why explaining and expressing on the planning forums is important for the success of every vendor.
Dylan, I want to go back to just when for a quick second. Again, we keep stressing, 30 days or 3 weeks before a party, the form should be complete. Aside from our own selfish reasons on why we want them complete, and they're not even selfish, they're really with your best interest in mind, but we know from our experience how hectic and chaotic the 2 to 3 weeks are leading up to the party for you as a client. the last thing you want to be doing is sitting down, filling out forms when you have other things that are coming up. It's going to happen. Maybe the dry cleaner lost, your pantsuit, or, the pants to your suit, or maybe, the printer that was printing something printed something incorrectly. Like, these are headaches that will possibly come up those week or two before. That's your time to embrace those things. And you know what? Hopefully you're one of those families that don't have any of those hiccups. Then it allows you to relax the week or two before the party. And that is so key. One of my very good friends celebrated their kid's party a few weeks ago. And jokingly, I was telling them about what I consider like the phases of mitzvah planning. And, it started with all the excitement. Like when you first get your date, it's so exciting. And then it becomes like a little overwhelming. Like, oh my God, there's all these venues I got to check out, and all these caterers and all these DJs and photographers. Like, how do you sift through that overwhelming? Then once you get over that hump, then there's this like sense of calm. Everything is just calm. You've got a couple months of chill. This all kind of relates back to these planning forms in a way, of the way that the timing works. And our big joke was about 2 to 3 weeks before the party, they were in the phase of, I don't know why I'm even doing this. And those of you families who are listening to this, I bet you could sympathize and know, like, you will have that moment. Like, did we make the wrong decision? Why are we having this party? It's costing an arm and a leg, the amount of effort, the fighting at home. It's just crazy. Why are we doing this? And then the week of, it starts to feel right. Everything falls in place. And the day of and the week or weeks to follow, you're in this euphoric state of, I'm so glad we did it. It was the best day of our life. It was worth every penny. And it really is this like roller coaster.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it reminds me of building the house.
Which you've gone through very well.
Which it's just like, sometimes it's a hurry up and wait, and then you get real antsy when you wait, and then sometimes it's like you can't seem to get your head above water. But hopefully the vendors you hire will walk you through and answer the questions as needed. And I don't know about everyone, but when you log in and update your planning forms, we're notified that something happens, which means that if you log in like 3 days in a row, it means Mrs. Smith is really cracking in. It gives us a trigger to then call you and say, how can we help? So you're not alone in these planning forms. A lot of times I'll have families say, I'm so overwhelmed with song choices. But if you get a jump start on it and you're not planning in 14 days prior, and you're starting to think about that music, you can call up your entertainment company and they'll walk you through step by step of every single song that could exist for that mentality of that candle. But if you're trying to do that in 4 days before your event during your final with your MC, I mean, that's really hard to pull off.
Dylan, I'm going to pose a question that I'm looking for an answer here. I feel like we have two types of families. There's the family that is self-sufficient for 80, 90% of the planning forms. Like, they dive in there, they fill out everything to the best of their abilities, and then we review. And then there's the family that almost refuses to look at the planning forms until we sit and talk. And then it's, hand-holding through each question. Can you explain why you feel strongly about one way or another, or what do you think is the best approach?
I believe the best approach is you guys taking a crack at it yourself. For a number of reasons, but most importantly, we know how to throw great events, but a great event for you could look differently. And if we're doing it in real time, trying to provide advice or opinions or expectations on your behalf, it ends up becoming more of a generic celebration as opposed to a celebration that's uniquely specified for you. I also find it really, really challenging to spend a significant amount of time 14 days beforehand trying to pull that off. So I really want you guys to take a crack at it yourself, because I don't know what your family loves or doesn't love. And some of it is so easy to pull off. You don't have to know everything, but you do have to give it a good try, because by you guys filling it out yourself, it allows me to see a little bit of your own opinions on it. And I would have never recommended a Tribe Called Quest for this one family's grand entrance, but because they put that in there, I can provide more, Lauryn Hill and the Fugees style songs because they gave me that a little bit of information on their first crack at this thing.
Yeah. So for the DJs that are listening to this or any vendor, I think if you design your forms in a way that it gives suggestions, like I'm looking at ours right now and it says, grand entrance, and it just leaves all the blanks, and a family's supposed to go in and fill in their grand entrance. But below it, it says suggested order: parents first, siblings next, guest of honor to follow. If we give the right suggestions, a family should be able to go in there and put in mom and dad's name, any siblings' names, guest of honor name. And, to your point, sometimes families just write in the words DJ choice when it comes to music.
Oh, it happened to me 2 weeks ago.
And other times they fill in their own choices. And you, as you just said, would have never picked Tribe Called Quest because you don't know the inner workings of that family.
Mike, can I tell a horror story about DJ choice?
Give it to me.
Okay. This is a horror story. But probably about, I want to say 12 years ago or so, I was given a DJ choice for like almost every single candlelighting song. And I picked just some great music, and I saw Aunt Lisa and Uncle Ricky as one of the groups. And I'm like, all right, let me pick like a fun song that is probably from their era. I chose Get On Your Feet. Right?
Gloria Estefan.
Yeah. And Aunt Lisa was in a wheelchair.
Not cool.
It was heart-wrenching. It's a great song. It's a fun song. It's a good candlelighting song. Boy, was it wrong for that specific person. And that's why, without any context, how would we have known?
Yeah.
How would we have known? Right? So if you give us more to work with, you are way more likely to have something designed specifically for you than generic dance song that could end horribly.
I bet you'll never use that song ever again for DJ's choice, no matter what the situation
I deleted it out of my library. That song doesn't exist. I haven't played it since then.
Unless it's like I don't know, the track team or something like that.
Nope, I deleted it out. It's gone forever.
Wow. Excellent. Well, I think this is a fun podcast. I think it's very valuable to know the importance of the planning forms and our timelines and why we insist on certain things. And I think my favorite takeaway from this is something I'd never thought of before, but it was something I had said was, I want to remind people in your sales process or in your booking process, ask every one of your vendors to see their planning forms. Even though it's way premature and you don't need to fill in the blanks, it should give you serious insight to the organizational skills of this entertainment or photographer or venue. It should give you good insight on their experience. If you get a one-pager that has 6 questions, and then you look at everybody else and they have 3 pages of significant questions with details and suggestions, who do you think is going to guide you better? So I like to leave people on that thought. And let's just say have a great July 4th. Have a great Independence Day. Enjoy the summer, but don't forget to plan.
That's right. All right. Well, that's Mike. I'm Dylan. We're Explosive, and we will catch you next time on Master Mitzvahs.